What's up? I'm back. It's GL88 here, back from our video. As you can see, I'm clearly back. Today's video is going to be on another M17 related video, but we're not talking about a mask itself today. Rather, we're talking about a hood for the M17 or the ABC-M17. Today's video is going to be on the ABC-M6 hood for the ABC-M17 and M17A1 series masks. Now this video, as you can see, is only going to be talking about the ABC-M6 hood, not the M6A2 hood. I'm planning on filming another video actually exactly after recording this one on the ABC-M6A2 hoods, because I'm planning on publishing both of these videos probably today. But I'm going to have a video, which is this one on the ABC-M6 hood and another one on the ABC-M6A2 hood. So if these videos are just going to be for if you want to figure out what model of hood you have and what pattern exactly of the hood you have. I'm making two separate videos, one for the M6 hood and one for the M6A2, so you can watch whatever video you want, so you can learn exactly what you want to learn. So, anyways, getting into this video, today's video, we're obviously talking about the ABC-M6 hood, so I guess we'll get into this. So, starting off, the ABC-M6 hood was introduced sometime after 1959, so the ABC-M17 itself was introduced in March 1959, but when the mask was introduced, there was no standard issue chemical hood for the mask. There was no hood adopted for it at the time, so there was no hood to provide extra chemical protection against chemical agents. Now this was considered a problem as the Chemical Corps did want a hood, for the mask, and the Army did as well. So they went and they ended up developing, the M6 hood. Now, the M6 hood was introduced sometime around 1960 to 1962. I know for sure that the M6 hood was introduced by late 1962. So, sometime between 1960 and 1962, the hood was introduced. I don't know exactly when. I know for sure it was introduced by late 1962, though. Now, when the hood was introduced, it was not standard issue. That's one thing I want to get out of the way immediately before, some people kind of question it. This hood was not standard issue. Now, this will probably clear some things up, because you probably have seen tons of pictures of, soldiers wearing ABC-M17s from, like, the early Vietnam period, like, the mid-60s and earlier, and they don't have a hood on with their mask, but you're like, well, there was a hood adopted. Why wouldn't they be wearing a hood with the mask? Well, that's because when these hoods were introduced, they were not standard issue. They were additionally authorized items. So they would have to be authorized to be issued. So these were really only issued if it was necessary for additional protection against chemical agents. So this was really only issued with like permeable gear and stuff like that. All right, this was not at the time they were adopted. At least they were not standard issue. So these were procured for special purpose use. Now this changed in the the early 70s, not the late 70s. This changed in the early 70s. There was some sort of regulation introduced, seems around 1972 to 1973, that had changed a whole bunch of things up, and one of the main things was that it made that the chemical hood would be a standard accessory for the M17 series. So every single M17 that was issued would have a hood issued with the mask as a standard issue piece to be fitted on the mask to be used at all times. Now, really, this regulation was put in place for the M6A2 hood. With the M6 hood, they were already outdated by the time that this regulation was introduced. You see, the M6A2 hood was introduced sometime around the mid-60s to replace the M6 hood. So the M6 hood was only produced for a few years in small quantities before being replaced by the M6A2 hood that was considered better in every aspect. In fact, it would appear, based on the manuals I've read, that the M6 hood was not even considered a piece in those manuals. Like, I have manuals from the early 70s that talk about hoods and such for ABC-M17s and whatever, but it does not have a single mention of the M6 hood, so it would appear by the early 70s this hood was already considered outdated, though the U.S. Army being the U.S. Army, they obviously issued the stocks they had of M6 hoods as stopgaps. You see, they wanted to burn up, all the sealed stocks of M6 hoods they had, so they issued the M6 hood alongside the M6A2 hood, not in the same numbers as the M6A2 hood, but when they did not have any M6A2 hoods available, they would burn up these extra stocks of M6A2 or M6 hoods. These were especially seen in training with training masks, like that one right there, that ABC-M17 you see right there on the left, that one is actually a late 70s, early 80s training issue piece that has an M6 hood on it. So these were seen especially a lot in training examples of masks from like the 70s, especially ABC-M17s. Again, they weren't shown as like a piece in any of the manuals that I've read. So the M6 hood was clearly considered outdated by then, but they were still burning up leftover stocks of M6 hoods when they did not have any M6A2s available. So the M6 hood was really only saw service during Vietnam, and then after that, during the later years of Vietnam, and then after that they were essentially completely redesignated for training, and leftover stocks were basically surplus because they were considered outdated, and the M6 hood was considered far superior. So I guess that kind of really concludes the history for this hood. As you can see, it had a relatively short-lived history. It was produced between the early and mid-60s before being replaced by the M6A2 hoods on the production lines and in general issue for the most part. They did see some use in late Vietnam once the regulations were introduced around 1972, requiring hoods to be, issued with all masks for extra chemical protection. So these did see some use with ABC-M17s and M17A1s issued in Vietnam, but really only in small numbers. And the only reason why they were issued was because they did not have, that units might have not had sufficient stocks of M6A2s, so they just issued their, new old stock supplies of M6 hoods. And then the rest of the M6 hoods were basically just reused for training purposes in the 70s and then eventually just surplused. So that's really it for the history of the M6 hoods. So I think I'll get into the differences here and then hopefully wrap up the video here. And then I'll go and film my M17, or the M6A2 hood video. So starting off here we have a first pattern hood. Now, these first pattern hoods, I'm going to tell you right now, these are uncommon as hell, alright? I've seen only like a few examples of these. These first pattern hoods are pretty damn rare when compared to the later pattern M6 hoods, which the M6 hoods in general are relatively uncommon because they didn't see that much production. But the first pattern especially did not see much production. The first pattern, I call this the first pattern because it's the earliest pattern of the hood I know of. There could have been an earlier pattern, but I don't believe there was. But I call this the first pattern hood. This could be a later hood or an earlier hood. I know for sure though this was like earlier. If it was, some sort of like in-between hood, like a transitional hood. But I'm gonna call this the first pattern because this is the earliest pattern of hood that I know of for the mask. This, for what I can tell, was the original hood, when it was first introduced. As you can see, it looks identical to a second pattern M6 hood. You're probably like, well, what's the difference? It's still, it has no zipper like all the M6 hoods do. It has the metal slider like all the M6 hoods do. So what's the difference? Well, if you flip the hood around here, there is no loop on the back here for the draw cord to keep it from going over the front of the mask. As you can see, it's absent. There's not one there. If you look at a second pattern M6 hood, you can see it right there. This was just non-existent on the first pattern hood. My guess is they didn't think it was, they didn't really think of it when it was first adopted, and then they quickly realized that that they were having problems with, donning times because this hood, the draw cord would go over the front of the mask when you donned it. So they added that little loop on the back there to help prevent it. And if you look on the inside, this is the other difference. The seams of the mask are not coated in rubber. You see, with the second pattern M6 hoods and all the M6A2 hoods, they were coated in rubber, as you can see, to help with chemical protection. On the original hood, these were not coated in rubber. One other thing I am going to note as well is where the straps are attached, or the little loops for the draw cord are attached, instead of sewing them in and then coating rubber over them, they actually put these little rubber patches over them instead. I believe I could show an example of that on my second pattern hood here, of how they attach these cords, if I can find where one's attached. There we go. Here's where it's attached on a second pattern hood. You can see the piece of fabric right there that's sewn in, and then they just coat it with rubber cement. While on the first pattern, they actually put a rubber patch over the top of it instead. But yeah, as you can see, there is no, rubber coating on the first pattern on the inside at the seams to help with chemical protection. It's not there. And the other difference I noticed is right here with the designation, as you can see, it says Hood Field Protected Mask M6. It says the same thing on the second pattern, but the AMC number right here is different. It's 156A instead of 208A. And also, right here, the lot number is 2011, while on the later hoods, it's 2012. And also, you can see here that the lot number here is 46112, which is very low. With most of these hoods, they're in the thousands. But this one is literally just over the hundreds, which is kind of interesting. And it's just an interesting thing to note there. But that's really it for a first pattern M6 hood. You know, everything else about it is basically identical. And I guess one other thing I could show off here is on both the patterns of the M6 hoods and all the M6A2 hoods, there's these little strings here that you would tie to help tie the hood to the bottom of the mask so it wouldn't pull away from the bottom of the mask. All the patterns of the hoods had that. I thought I'd just show that off real quick. Also, another thing to note is you probably noticed that there's this thing over the hood. This is a winterizing kit. This is not part of the hood. This was a separate accessory that would be issued to go over the hood. So this is not part of the hood. This is not a difference in the first pattern from the second pattern. This is just a winterizing kit that's put over the front of the mask. The other, so I guess going over, the other hood here, as you can see, still metal zipper, or, metal slider, no zipper on the front there. You look on the back, you got your loop for the draw cord. And then you look on the inside, as you can see, there's rubber coating, rubber cement coating over the seams to help with chemical protection. And if I can find the lot number real quick, it shouldn't be too hard to find. There we go. You can see that the lot number is now 212 and the AMC number is now 208A. But that's really the differences in these two hoods here. You still got the little cords right here to tie to the bottom of the mask. Everything's still like the same otherwise. All the seams are in the same locations. It's just the only difference is on the first pattern, there's no loop for the draw cord on the back. It's not there. There's no sign of the one ever being there. Now with some of these later ones, they could have been training issued. Like some of these training issue hoods, they would cut this cord off. For some reason, this loop on the back, they cut the loop off, and you'd be able to see like the remains of the loop there. So don't let that fool you. If you see a bit of canvas back here, like that little end piece right there sewn on, then it's the second pattern hood still. It's just they cut the cord off or the loop off for whatever reason, because it seems like with some of these training issue ones they did that for some reason. And then again, the other difference being there's no rubber coating on the inside, and then the lot number is different. And I already showed that stuff. And then second pattern, still no zipper, all that, but only difference being loop on the back and rubber cement inside the hood for the seams. But that's really it for this video. I guess I hope you guys enjoyed. Hopefully you now know the difference between a first pattern and a second pattern M6 hood. And I hope you guys enjoyed. Hopefully you learned something, and see y'all later.